Please join me in welcoming the programmer of our 30th anniversary series and our programmer since the very beginning at the Austin Film Society, Richard Linklater.
Thanks for being here. Okay, how many of you are watching Los Olvidados in 35mm on the big screen for the first time? Hands up. Wow, it's so exciting. This is going to be amazing. You know, what can you say? Buñuel, like, you'll hardly hit a film list of greatest directors of all time that Buñuel's not in the top, 5, 10, you know, he's always up there. His films are forever there. He has kind of one of the most fascinating careers ever, you know, and he made probably the most famous short film ever, I think, on Shenandoah, 1929. He's born in 1900. So he makes these 3 films, 29, L'Âge d'Or, and Land Without Bread. What's that, about 33 or so. And then he has, this film's 1950 that we're going to see. He has this kind of invents his career. When you think of Buñuel, it's really this period on. He's 50, so he loses a couple decades in there. He's working in and around film. I don't think he, you know, there was a revolution in Spain. He was in Paris. He came to the US for a while. He worked on dubbing, you know, he worked at the MoMA for a while. It's really amazing. He goes to Mexico in the later 40s. And we'll talk about it with this Charles. He knows more about everything than I do. But I'm just building up to what happens in this film. He'd worked on a couple films, and then it all comes together in this film you're about to see. I think you have to think Neorealism is in the air, you know, Rossellini, and you know, everything that's going on in Italy, De Sica, Zavattini, Shoeshine, Bicycle Thief, that's very much kind of in vogue. So I think they get this film made because of that. Hey, we'll do one of those films. But of course, Buñuel, being forever the surrealist, you know, he's from the surrealist school. He's along with Dali and a few others, he's one of the, you know, symbols of that whole period in Paris. He can't help but kind of go beyond neorealism, and he goes to Freudianism. It's a very surreal movie. It breaks a lot of rules, and I think what got him in trouble. And it was attacked at the time. He literally said a woman came at him with her nails and tried to like scratch his eyes out in Mexico. You know, he's in Mexico City. I think the intelligentsia, the upper classes, they didn't want to see this and think it was their country. But Buñuel, he just couldn't help himself. He had no, I think the surrealist in him he was allergic to like sentimentality. He couldn't, no mythologizing, no fantasy, which I think people were sort of used to. If it was a Soviet film of the period, you would show this kind of degradation, and then at the end, the young men would get with the program and become good citizens because they, you know, whatever. That doesn't happen here. And then this film, and he reels off one of the greatest decades in film history. You know, Buñuel from 50 to 60 in Mexico is just an incredible period. And, well, we'll talk more after. Charles, the foremost historian of Mexican cinema, will be up on stage. And I want to hear your thoughts. And we show this, we had a series about 20 years ago called Subversive in the Studio. It was a Buñuel series. And keep in mind, this is kind of a studio-ish environment in Mexican cinema. He had super low budgets. He said I think he shot films in usually 18 to about 22 days. I think this was somewhere around 20 days. He said he never spent more than 4 days editing a film. So these films are very, well, that was just his own genius, but he's taking very little means and making something really beautiful and kind of incredible here. And well, you'll see for yourself, and we'll be up after to talk about Buñuel and this film. It's participatory. I don't, you know, it's not a lecture. It's like we want to hear your ideas and how you're affected by this film. 65 years later, one of the most influential films, I think, ever. You know, everybody's still affected by it. You'll see other films you've seen over the years that wouldn't have existed without this film. And it's as powerful today as it was then, I'm sure. So, right, we'll see you after. Thanks for being here. Man, I was thinking, from the very beginning, that little bumper before they showed the towns of the world and all that. Buñuel had nothing to do with that.
Right.
Yeah, that they tacked that on. This film, when it came out in Mexico, like I alluded to in the introduction, he got a lot of resistance, and no one wanted to see this movie. And then it got into Cannes. It won a big award at Cannes. I mean, he was a name, especially in France. But they kind of wondered where you've been all these years.
Where we've been the last 20 years.
Yeah, which is a great story, but it's like, oh wow, and from Mexico, here shows up.
Right.
Buñuel's working in Mexico.
He pretty much just dropped off the map.
Yeah.
I mean, he did not exist.
And then this
the
film
last
shows
film
up.
he had made was that short documentary, Land Without Bread, 1933.
He had worked on other things. I guess he had done one in Mexico, but nothing that hit international.
He had made 2 films before this.
Right.
Yeah. So
that are kind of hard to find. This is the one that hits the map.
Yeah,
so he wins like Best Director at Cannes. It becomes kind of a sensation, and then it gets distribution. It plays for a long time in Mexico and worldwide. And
so when it opens,
there was a nice delay there too. I think he had already shot his next movie, Susanna. I think because there was like a big lag time between no one liking the film and then it winning awards, getting international, and then it was okay. Then Mexico kind of embraced it to whatever degree.
So when it opened, it was a flop.
Yeah, of course.
It played just a couple of days in its first run, and the producer must have known it, and that's why he put that tag at the beginning.
You get kind of desperate.
This isn't Mexico City. All big cities
Oh,
are
everybody
like
has this problem.
And so I think
even the wording of that, until progressive forces.
That's right. Yeah.
Like and they named it. Like in France, it has the name. Every country has a different title. He hated the French name. It was like. Pity them, or please pity them. And Buñuel was like, oh, no way. But he kind of liked the American title, The Young and the Damned.
The Young and the Damned.
He was okay with that one. Yeah. But please pity them was not his vibe.
Was not his favorite. Yeah.
No.
So the film dies, and the producer. So what happened was Oscar Danzigers. Who was an immigrant from Russia and had come and was making films in Mexico City. And he, so what happened, this was the 3rd movie they made together. Right. So he made one in 1946 that was released in 47 that didn't do so well. Right. But it was with one of the big Mexican stars, Jorge Negrete, who was a singing leading man, and the film didn't do that well, and so he kind of sat on the sidelines for another couple of years, and Oscar Danzigers had another film for him, and that film did much better, and so what they kind of did is they worked out a deal where I did 2 for you, can I do 1 for me? And that was kind of the relationship going forward, and he said, okay, do 1 for you. And this is the one he wanted to do, and if you look back, it's kind of related to what he was doing with Land Without Bread. I mean, he did have this social conscience.
He goes to the poorest region of
Spain. And so
if you've never seen this, it's one of the great documentaries, or is it?
It's on YouTube.
What is it? It's just an amazing film. I love that film so much, but it must have been, he's reinventing himself. Like, it must have been weird to work with actors and to tell a story in a feature-length.
So he's researching the film by looking at files from juvenile court records and walking the neighborhoods and going into slums and meeting people and talking to them.
He read an article about they found a 12-year-old boy in a trash heap. The ending of the movie. Yeah. And I think he just must have imagined the last few weeks in the life of that young man. That boy. So this is kind of working backwards.
And so now he's part of the industry. He's part of the studio system in Mexico, which means for this film, what I found is This was made in 18 days.
Yeah, 18.
Yeah, for a budget of
Wow.
$56,000, and his salary was $2,000.
Yeah.
And it was probably edited in about 3 days.
Yeah, he always
I'm
said,
not
I read
kidding.
he has one of the great filmmaker autobiographies of all time called
Yeah.
My Last Sigh.
My last side.
And he said he never spent more than 4 days editing a film.
Right, right. And the reason was, and this was the first time he worked with one of the great cinematographers, not just in
Yeah.
Mexican history, but
Oh.
in film history,
Yeah.
Gabriel Figueroa. And Gabriel Figueroa said the reason he could edit that fast is he worked so meticulously. When he arrived on the set, he knew exactly what today's shots were going to be, how we were going to get them.
How they were going to be edited.
Yeah.
If you're going to...
And he
18
said they
days
were
is better.
so well directed and prepared that it was just a matter of shooting it and then cutting off the ends, and you just stapled, pasted those together, and that was your film.
You know, Michael Bauhaus says the same about Fassbinder, who made so many films, and also one of the great decades in film history. I think Fassbinder in the 70s in Germany. Same kind of thing. He'd shoot a day of film in 12 days, 14 days, 18 days. He made 7 films in 1 year once. But you only can do that if, and he just said he would shoot hardly any film, and I think he said that about this. He would shoot about 20,000 feet of film. You know, that's like
oh well, you have to. If
nothing. I mean,
your
that's
budget is that low, you
yeah.
have to really plan. So what he did was he had made shorts up until this point. Now he was within a system, working on schedule, on budget, wanting to work again, so has to work within those constraints. He just learns how to do it, and he just, and he says, this is what made me a professional filmmaker. I learned how to put a film together and how to get it out. So the movie comes out, it dies, and the producer is scrambling around for ideas about what, how can I get my money back, and am I going to get my money back on this movie? And what happened was a friend of Buñuel's, the novelist Carlos Fuentes, got the film Los Olvidados into the Cannes Film Festival. And it goes off to Cannes, and it does very, very well. And Buñuel wins Best Director at Cannes. And then he comes back, and now he's a hero in Mexico. Amigo!
Yeah, it took acclaim outside your own country, of course.
Right, yeah. Now
that's the only good thing about those awards, is
they
might motivate the people around you who don't believe in you.
Yeah,
and distribute it.
Yeah, and now it plays for weeks on end, and it's standing room only, and and it's a big success. But in the meantime, should I tell you about the other ending?
Well, okay, we have a surprise for everyone who has stayed. We didn't even tell anyone.
Yeah.
So this is why you should stay after this.
So what happened was, one of the schemes that the producer came up with is, and he knew what he had, and he knew the film that they had made with this bleak ending. It's a pretty dark film all the way through, but this ending, he shot this other ending. And the idea was, we will re-release it with this other ending on it instead, and maybe that'll play better, and I can at least get my money back. So
his $56,000.
His $56,000, right? Yeah. Which they didn't get. The producers got the money from the film bank, the National Film Bank. So it wasn't really their money. They borrowed it.
Yeah.
They did have to pay it back, but still,
if you're hoping to make another film.
Yeah. So,
but anyway,
shall we show?
Desperate. Yes, let's watch this alternate ending. It's only a couple minutes, right?
Right. It's real short.
I'll be very. I've never seen it. I'll be very curious to see where you jump in to get an alternate ending. And
No, and it was one of those things where there was rumored to be an ending, and people said, no, there wasn't, and yes, there wasn't.
Buñuel never talked about it.
No, and I'm wondering if he had anything to do with it,
I'm sure he didn't.
Anyway, and it was found just recently, in 1996, it was discovered, and it just turned up. So shall we slide these things out of the way and watch it?
I know exactly what happened. I don't know anything, of course, but I'm theorizing.
Okay.
Okay, so Danziger was giving him shit the whole time anyway, right? They're making the movie. Buñuel famously wanted to have some of his more absurdist, out there ideas, he wouldn't let him. I mean, that that kind of steel frame building in the
building
background.
that's going up in the background.
He wanted to have a orchestra, like a 100-piece orchestra playing as
Yeah.
during that fight scene. Just little things if you glimpse. Just, you know, it's there. Was that? You know, one of those kind of things. And he wouldn't let him have that.
Yeah.
So I think
That would have been an expensive shot.
yeah,
That would take
that's
him
right, and
over
it's probably too
56,000.
much.
Yeah.
You know, I think these guys work together. I don't think they're
Yeah.
adversaries. You know, so I bet he was probably just writing him the whole time, saying, "We can't have that ending. It's so bleak. Let's just shoot another one." And Buñuel probably shot that
Yeah.
and just said, "Yeah," because it kind of. I mean, what did you think? Especially the interior of the fight. It just didn't look like they went back 6 months later or a year. They didn't.
No.
They look exactly the same. He wasn't older or anything.
Yeah.
You know, I bet they shot it at the time, and just to get him off his back. Like, okay, we'll shoot 2 endings, and we'll just see which works. I think, you know, you could get put in that position, and then he just never had any intention of ever. Then they probably had a fight, and he's like, okay, I'll take my name off the film if you know. Or he showed it and said, see, that's such a lame ending, we can't use it. Or whatever.
Are you speaking from experience?
No, I never really shot, but I could see where it could happen.
Oh yeah.
Yeah,
Sure.
you know,
Sure.
it does. There's film
and-
history there's just a ton of.
Well, and
You
it's such a dark movie, and if you think about it, I mean, it follows the 3-act structure until the very end. I mean, so he's making
You got to go all the way with the idea.
Yeah, Pedro is making the right decisions.
I know,
He's
that's
going
so
to get a
heartbreaking.
job, and Haibo shows up and steals the knife.
Fucking Haibo.
And then he denounces Haibo's bad news.
Haibo.
Yeah, bad news. Yeah.
He is, the saddest moment is when the principal, the authority, you know, gives him the money, trust, and he's like, okay.
Yeah.
And then, boom, there he
Bad
is.
news
It's
shows
like,
up.
oh,
Yeah.
oh
Yeah.
no.
And you know it's going to be bad.
But he killed him fairly easily there in the new ending.
Yeah.
He just pushed him over, or did he stab him?
Well, he kind of lost his balance, and luckily he was close to the
I don't
edge.
think you're defeating Haibo that easily.
No.
He's a wolf.
But then he denounces Haibo, so that's like, you know, the end of Act 2. And, you know, he's
Yeah.
doing all the right things, and for doing all the right
I
things,
know.
he dies. You know, and that's
Yeah.
really a downer ending.
Oh, God.
That's worse than the bicycle thieves, you know.
Oh yeah.
The
It's
father's
so
doing all the right
bleak.
things, but
Well,
he survives.
Let's face it. Does every? I mean, I'll give a little pass to the headmaster, the principal at that thing. But other than that, does every adult in this movie just suck? I think so.
Yeah, and that's one of the toughest things about it. It's still a tough movie. 65 years later, it's
Yeah.
hard because there's no sentimentality at all. The old man
that's
is
what's-
not a wise
No,
old
he's a-
man.
he's a bastard.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
He's
the
not
mom.
some enlightened blind guy.
No.
He's a-
Yeah, and he's happy to see
Yeah,
Haibo get killed.
He's
And-
hearkening back to the good old days.
to the good old days of the
Fascist-
dictatorship.
Yeah. Back then they knew.
Yeah, well, really, yes, the
Yeah.
dictatorship. That's when the good times were.
Yeah, but what a great performance that young actor. If you really look at this, it's one. I think it's kind of.
Haibo?
Yeah.
Haibo, yeah.
But the kid, the
Pedro. Yeah.
I don't know if that guy, if he was a non-professional. Haibo was an actor,
He was.
as I remember.
And he continued.
He shows up in other movies.
Yeah.
He's in Mexican Bus Ride a couple years after this.
Yeah.
But and I think he had a career and everything.
Yeah.
He's too charismatic and
And you know, I found
one of the great bad guys.
he
all
is
time.
a great bad guy.
Yeah.
And I found an interview with him.
Oh,
and,
yeah?
And
What's
they
his
were
name?
asking him about
Roberto. It's a short lesson. Roberto.
I just went blank.
Yeah, it's like oboe.
Uh,
I don't know.
Como, Roberto Como.
Yeah.
And they were asking him about, what about this rumored other happy ending? And he said, no, that never happened. We never shot that.
I think they did it, and Buñuel said, okay. At the end of
And
the
it-
shoot
it
that
felt
day,
like just another
he went,
take.
okay,
Yeah.
we're gonna do this. It will I promise, because the actors are going, what the hell?
Yeah.
And he's like, it'll never see light of day.
This time you fall over.
But then all these years later, there
yeah.
it is.
Yeah. So they did kind of.
But that's kind of interesting that they made it available, put it together, added the history.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
All the stuff we've been saying here, that just proves we're not lying to you. We know our Buñuel history, because there is...
Cut it down.
Yeah.
Do you remember the first time you saw this movie?
Yes, I saw this in 1982 at the River Oaks Theater in Houston on a double feature. Get this.
Wow.
The teen double feature rebellion of Over the Edge.
Oh,
yeah, that's inspired programming.
Boy,
It's
no
an inspired
kidding.
double feature
Yeah, yeah.
for those of you who know Over the Edge.
Yeah, for
Was
sure.
the American kind of suburban version of this. That's not as bleak, but pretty bleak for an American film. That's why they had a similar fate too. I think Over the Edge was no big hit at the time either. But you got to admire any film that just goes all the way with it. There's so many, like the American films of the era. Hitchcock was so good at that, but he would have that ending that still kind of wrapped it up. American audiences got accustomed to just like, okay, the guy I've liked the whole movie who's really the bad guy, he's going to get killed, and it's like, okay, we pass the Catholic Church or whoever's giving us the approval, but we really know what the movie was about. But it had to be this, they still had to kill the bad people had to be punished and all that stuff. So I think American audiences just got used to this. I mean, there's no way this would have got through in this country.
Yeah, for so many reasons.
Yeah, I mean, no way.
Yeah, yeah.
But,
It's a really tough movie and a really hard movie.
Yeah,
I wanted to ask you about two of the great dream sequences or dream movies.
I think this is the
of all
greatest
time.
death, one of the best deaths.
One of the best
sequences.
deaths. Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Just really.
Yeah, because
Eerie.
for all his, he's a great bad guy.
Yeah.
I will, but if you have a heart, he's an abandoned kid. He never knew his mom. You know that.
And one of those voices, the
that,
female voice that he hears,
his mother, the one he talked about
mother that
when he's seducing. His mom.
He
But he's
uses
like,
it as,
he's not a great guy or anything, but he's, he's still.
In a way,
he's a product.
Did you all feel like it humanized him at the very end? I mean, it's this character that you think can never be humanized.
No, he's a vicious bad guy. But I mean, he's a victim too. If you look at it, that's probably that's Buñuel's probably politics.
Yeah. But just the image of the dog on the
mangy dog.
Yeah, the mangy dog on the wet street, and and then his head going back and forth, and then the freeze frame.
Freeze frame with the eye just a little bit.
Wow.
Yeah, it's like, ooh.
And supposedly that influenced Truffaut. And
the freeze frame at the end of 400 Blows.
400 Blows.
Well, this film influenced, let's like Polanski, it influenced multiple, it's still influencing people.
I mean, in 1950, the freeze frame was not part of film language.
No.
There was no such thing as a freeze frame.
Yeah, why would you?
Yeah, it's just, and so he's doing stuff that, hadn't been invented yet.
Yeah.
And the guys under the bed in that dream sequence, and
That's
there's
the most bizarre,
some jump cuts as they moved, and once again the jump cut doesn't exist either in 1950. But he's just
this film. It's always a mystery. This film, I've seen it a bunch, as have you, and I still see things I've completely forgotten. Like some films you see and you really know, every scene, you know where it's going. This one unfolds kind of like a dream. It just sort of, and I forget so many beautiful little details. The mother passing at the end, I'd completely forgotten that.
Yeah.
Like there's her dead son on the donkey, and she just kind of gives a glance, like, I'd forgotten that. Or the way the little, while he's dead, the little hen jumps on him.
Oh yeah. To rhyme the black, the black rooster that.
Or what the headmaster, what the guy told him.
Yeah.
Like the hens will have their revenge.
Yeah.
Not that he killed them, but just that kind of thing. I was like, I kind of forgot that beautiful kind of, I don't know what it is,
And it's only 80 minutes long.
I know, Buñuel was just the master of the 82-minute film, the 85-minute film. Like, he's just the brevity, I don't know. I think he and Bresson are my favorites in that way. Just nothing extraneous.
Yeah.
There's not an extra frame in this movie.
And and it's so so compact, and yet it's a full meal. When you're done with it, it has totaled you. Yeah.
Every time. Yeah.
Do you think that this film influence waking life? I mean, the dream sequence, and do you have, I mean, not
I hadn't
consciously
thought
or
of that, but
unconsciously?
yeah. Well, is this what? I mean, dreams and movies go back a long way.
Yeah.
But you have to hand it to Buñuel.
Yeah,
Like
but that's a great dream sequence.
Yeah, and he goes slow motion. But as he
Yeah.
matures, I mean, as he keeps making movies, it's hard to think of him as maturing because he's already
It's already
50 plus. Yeah, but if you really go into the 70s, when
Yeah.
he was, he
Yeah.
could do much more of anything he wanted. If you see those 60s and 70s films, where his dream sequences, he would never like slow down. Like, at least these are in slow motion and you kind of, you have a sense you're in a dream. But those, you realize the characters, without even changing the lighting, you're in a dream sequence. It's just this kind of surreal,
Yeah.
alternate universe kind of dream sequence,
Yeah.
where you realize, oh, you know, it's kind of the most subversive kind of dream
That
sequence.
was a dream.
Yeah, yeah, the characters are, they're often in
Yeah.
dreams. So I think he probably did it best, you know, because most like dreams in movies, they're so obvious. So,
Right.
you know, like Hitchcock didn't pull it off. You know, no one.
Well,
they're
there's
just too.
it's harder than it looks, right?
Yeah,
I
they
mean,
get.
and
you know,
they're usually overdone.
gauzy, and
Yeah.
it's not like how you actually perceive your dreams.
Right.
You know, so that's something to. I guess someone's probably written a thesis or on that. You know, like dreams in movies and how they're depicted. But he's the master.
Waking Life wasn't too bad.
Oh well. But it's all a dream. Let me just read the films of the 50s. I was saying that earlier, and these are just the ones I've seen in life. And there's some more.
Okay.
If you go 50, this is what I was saying. Okay, after this, there's Susanna, Mexican Bus Ride, Woman Without Love, El Bruto, El, The Strange Passion, Wuthering Heights,
yeah.
Robinson Crusoe, Criminal Life of Archibaldo de la Cruz, Nazarene, and The Young One. 11 films, 1 decade.
Yeah.
Unbelievable.
Not a bad decade.
Unbelievable. And there's
Yeah.
like 3 or 4 more in here. You probably have seen that I haven't. But those are the ones I've seen and enjoyed. And remember in the 80s, they made new prints of several of these, and they hadn't been seen in a long
Yeah.
time. So he kind of continues to be, you know, rediscovered and appreciated. You know, that.
Yeah, and that's one of the things. So if you think of Buñuel's career in kind of 3 phases,
Yeah.
lots of people know the avant-garde, surrealist,
Yeah, the early stuff.
you know, Un Chien Andalou, 1929, and L'Âge d'Or, Golden Age, 1930. Lots of people know that, and lots of people know his later films that he made in
Yeah.
Europe again. The Discreet Charm of the
Yeah,
Bourgeoisie.
at that point he's winning Oscars for
Right,
best
yeah.
foreign film.
Right.
He's like you look
Yeah.
at the acclaim. And
But-
the
but
dude's
most people-
in his 70s. He can't hear. He's been deaf for
Right, yeah.
but he's cranking out these beautifully bizarre, wonderful.
And he was a surrealist
Yeah.
from start to
I
finish.
really love his 3 films. His last 3 films. He goes out so strong. Discreet Charm, Phantom of Liberty, Obscure Object of Desire. It's like, wow,
Yeah, yeah,
wow.
yeah. It just kept getting,
Yeah.
in a way they got better and better.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So, I mean, how many artists are blessed with that kind of,
Yeah.
you know, who else in film history started at 50, basically, and
Yeah,
had
exactly.
27
Yeah, yeah.
incredible years?
Yeah. So don't give up.
Yeah.
You know,
I know, it's like,
No, no, I tell my students, you know, because, you know, Orson Welles, you know, made Citizen Kane when he was 24 and all that stuff, and I
I
said,
think
well,
we can say Buñuel is the complete
no, I
opposite of
know.
Orson
And
Welles.
no, yeah, and so I tell students, you know, if you don't make it by 24, just tell everybody you're on the Buñuel trajectory.
Yeah.
And you're going to get brilliant later, and it's going to happen.
That's the way to do it.
No, no kidding. And
But,
from 50 till he died,
I know,
just
it's just,
what a run.
It's stunning.
Yeah.
Just everyone, and even though he was making films, he was adapting. He made a lot of different genres. If you look at all the films, there are all these different genres, but they're all unmistakably Buñuel.
Yeah.
You know, he's one of the few filmmakers, I think, the handful. You watch 2 minutes of a Buñuel film, and you kind of know you're in Buñuel. What is it? What is that? And it's hard to even put your. It's not so much. I mean, it's not so much a visual style. It's like a tone or an attitude that I don't know. Just that. I guess that lack of.
Yeah, he was
sentiment,
always
that
kind of
a tone.
examining and critiquing the bourgeoisie. He was a surrealist. I mean, it wasn't a fad
Yeah,
for him.
no,
It was
to his dying
it was
breath.
a moral position.
He was a surrealist.
Yeah, and it was his vision.
Yeah.
And he just saw, you know, the strangeness in life as this kind of poetic set of imagery. So, should we?
You know, I love that story you heard where, you know, like he was young friends with Salvador Dali, right?
Right. Yeah, yeah.
And then Dali, this is when he's Buñuel's struggling in the U.S. He's got this job at MoMA in the photography. What's he like?
Yeah. He was making propaganda films or putting together editing propaganda
but
films.
He needed a job, you know, he had a family. And, you know, Dali writes this book, his own autobiography, you know, and and this is at the worst, in the late 40s, I guess, or sometime in the 40s, he says, you know, Buñuel is an atheist and a communist. You know, he kind of says the two worst things you could be in the U.S. at that time. And so Cardinal or whatever, Archbishop Spellman comes and they basically fire him.
Yeah, they fire him.
From the MoMA. Or he forced resignation or something. Then he goes to Hollywood.
Yeah,
and works at Warner
kicks
Brothers.
around for a while.
But thanks, Salvador. You know.
Yeah.
Yeah, and
gosh.
Yeah. I think they made up much. Did they?
I don't
much
know.
later in life.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I don't know. So, shall we open up to questions
Sure.
or comments, or anybody want to?
Yeah, promise a discussion. We've just been yakking.
Yeah.
But anyway, please join
Do you
in.
think he was influenced by Dead End in any way?
Buñuel?
This film specifically.
I don't know.
I just felt it had like a lot of similarities.
Yeah?
It was a lot. It wasn't quite as dark, but
He wouldn't claim it.
Kids and everything.
He never.
I don't know what.
Dead End?
Dead End by Sinclair Lewis, but then that was a film.
Mm-hmm. You know, I don't know. He never mentioned that, and so I don't know. But as Rick was saying before the film, I mean, you know, this was right after World War II and Italian neorealism, and neorealism kind of was sweeping the film world, and this kind of getting back to basics, telling contemporary stories about real social problems. That was kind of in the air.
Yeah, I think that was a worldwide.
Yeah, and I think it's more that, and it's also.
And you saw it in literature. You saw it.
Yeah, and you know, and he was doing the same thing with Land Without Bread, in a way, which is more documentary. But he was, you know, looking at social problems and real social problems. So, you know, I think it was that as much as anything. What else?
Far back.
Two comments. I thought one of the most powerful scenes was that one shot through that store window.
Yeah,
Ooh.
it's one take, a one-take.
I've
scene.
forgotten that.
Yeah.
Actually. Where the
the
pedophile dude's trying to pick him up.
scene.
Yeah, that's so creepy.
Shattering.
Yeah.
Also,
And silent, you know.
the end credits. I think it was a Canadian company that did the subtitles. Bad job.
Yeah, I agree.
You don't like these subtitles?
Yeah, bad subtitles.
Because I've commented on this on other movies. Like, I hate it when they re-subtitle movies, because you get used to reading the movie when they change. But, I mean, this is more racy, because in the standard one, they don't use words like fucking asshole and what an asshole. You know, they don't, that's not in the previous one. So I sort of like that they probably got.
Some were way off.
Yeah, I
But
agree.
Yeah. I generally am against that re-subtitle.
Thank you, Charles.
Yeah, you bet. For that question, he won a copy of my book on Mexican cinema. It's because I agreed with him.
Courtesy of UT Press.
Yeah, it just came out from UT Press. Let me give a plug. So it's called The Classical Mexican Cinema, and there's a chapter on Luis Buñuel in there. So it's basically Mexican cinema, 30s, 40s, and 50s, the first half of the last century, pretty much. So lots of pictures.
Was that possibly some of the backlash? Just the fact that it's like pretty much the most aristocratic person we see in the film, and the guy's pedophile.
Yeah, he looks like he's doing all right. So he got a wallet there with some money. Yeah. Again, I think that's how.
Well, he's always after the bourgeoisie, always.
Yeah.
And so that's a target. And
Yeah, you're either being neglected or preyed upon. That's really.
Yeah. How How about right here? Yeah.
What was Buñuel's economic background? I'm assuming he came from privilege, but what's his origin?
He grew up in Spain and Jesuit educated. I mentioned that because I'm Jesuit educated.
Yeah.
And it really messes you up. And then I think middle class or so.
Yeah,
What'd
I
you
don't
think?
think.
Yeah.
I don't think it wasn't on the.
Yeah, he
It
wasn't
wasn't, you know,
wealthy
kinda-
or anything.
yeah.
Yeah.
I don't, but he.
And he had to have, so his mother financed Un Chien Andalou
Right.
and gave him, I don't know, a couple $1,000 or something to make Un Chien Andalou. And he met a wealthy aristocrat that paid for L'Âge d'Or, I think. And so he was making, that's how he was making those films. And so getting into the Mexican industrial system of the studio, I mean, was, you know, he had to learn how to do that because he was just
Yeah.
making, you know,
I would
films.
imagine
when he
in
could make
Paris
some money.
during the 20s, you kind of fall into that. You have patrons. And
Right.
I'm sure all your painter friends are doing that, and all
Yeah.
your,
Yeah,
you know.
so.
Do you guys remember Buñuel's? It's a little more than a cameo in Woody Allen's
And Woody Allen, yeah.
Midnight. What is it?
Midnight in Paris.
Midnight in Paris,
Yeah.
yeah. And,
They got a pretty good look-alike.
yeah,
The guy,
yeah.
Woody.
Yeah. What else?
So you guys already talked about like humanizing Haibo and how like you gave him like a really bad background, but he's also doing this like really horrible things.
Yeah.
And so I was wondering, what did you feel like how Buñuel like wrote that line between what can be assigned to context and how circumstance is a victim as opposed to like personal responsibility? Like where does he draw that line?
That's a tough one.
Yeah, I don't think Buñuel would ever answer that or say, give a straight answer on that one. But we can all.
Yeah, but I
You
mean,
know,
it's
like he's a bad guy. It's not just like he's robbing people. He's actively, sadistically,
yeah.
you know, the legless man, he kicks his thing. Like, what does that accomplish? You know, he's a
Yeah.
bad guy.
And attacking a blind musician,
Yeah.
you know, and
But you see his
breaking all
influence. You know, he's older than those other guys, more mature, and they fall under his. You know, but that's all it takes is that one bad friend. You know, and you know, young Pedro. You know, he's being lost to the streets and through this guy. You know, so.
yeah.
It's kind of that gang mentality too. It's like a pack of dogs, you know.
Yeah.
Alone, I would say this about all the boys. They would never do any of that alone, except you know Haibo. You know, of course he will do that alone. I think, but you know he's a bit of a psychopath.
Talking about choices too in the movie, I was interested in what specifically you thought about the mother having had her first kid at 14. Is that as judgmental as it seems, and is that about a choice that then defines who she becomes later?
It's kind of loaded too, because she admits later she doesn't know who 14 and not knowing who the father is. So,
Yeah.
what's your conclusion there?
Yeah, and who knows what those circumstances were.
Yeah,
you know.
you just-
So I don't.
You can't.
Yeah, I don't judge her.
Yeah, you
know,
can't. Yeah.
because
It's
of
just
that. You know,
like a
It's just-
fact in someone's life. I think.
I just wonder if it's what he thinks leads to the way that she treats her kids, or not knowing.
Well, the mother says that. The mother says, you know, why should I love him? I didn't even know his father. You know, so you know, in so many words, she's saying that. So then you wonder, you know. But once again, I mean, it's about, you know, it's also kind of taking a shot at machismo and, you know, what kind of system is this where a 14-year-old girl would be taken advantage of and all of that, you know. So it's also, you know, taking a shot at that as well, you know. And so he read this list of films. I mean, Elle is about the madness of machismo. I mean, you got to see this movie called
That's
Elle.
in a way that's
It is-
maybe my favorite. I
No,
mean,
no, me too.
I love that film so much.
But isn't it crazy? I mean,
It's insane.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
And
it's
that's what he's saying. He's saying machismo is insane.
But he felt that himself. If you read his books, he admits that.
Yeah.
You know, Buñuel himself, like, had a gun on him when he went to meet with back to Salvador Dali. He was going to shoot him in the knee. But he
Was
didn't.
he really?
Yeah. Yeah. He met him after that communist incident I
Yeah.
described.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, he was that. He was jealous. He was
Right.
a man of his time. I think that was. But at least he dealt with it artistically in a movie like Elle.
Yeah.
You just see the extremes.
It's incredible.
But it's,
and
it's funny though. I mean, at least he had that wicked sense of humor.
Yeah.
It's obsessive, but that plays really well on film. It's not fun in your own life when someone's acting like that, but it's fun on film to see that kind of behavior.
Yeah. And in Elle, I mean, he's obviously crazy, but everybody takes him as sane because he's a very respected man.
Again, he's got money.
Yeah, So just that's the way they are. Just go along with it.
One of the last scenes in that when he goes to the church.
Yeah.
And everybody at the church is laughing at him. He thinks, even the father,
the priest.
Yeah, and he attacks him.
What else? Other questions? Gosh, so many questions. Yeah. How about way over there?
It's such an extra sort of turn and screw that you don't think about until afterward, maybe. That to imagine the principal, waiting there back at the reformatory, Pedro never comes back. This is a world where even, not only is trying to honor someone's trust, a course toward disaster, but putting trust in people is also unrewarded. And people's motives and become obscured by.
Yeah, so even
that's such a sad scene because you have to think the man, the authority who put that trust in him, his heart gets a little more hardened, a little more cynical, a little more. It's not fair. It's not just in that way, but that's the reality. You see how one bad thing begets another, and there's just.
Yeah. And he doesn't know what we know. We know why he didn't come back. All he knows is he didn't come back.
Yeah, he seemed like a good kid, but
which, as you say, another turn of the screw makes it even worse
these days. Yeah, no, it's the tragedy is so widespread, and it just feels like it has tentacles out everywhere.
Right there.
Well, to your point, I really felt like Buñuel was making such powerful statements about poverty because when you say that their intentions couldn't be trusted and that there was no right way to navigate this complicated world, and I felt like he gave the best line to the principal when he said that if we could lock up poverty instead of children.
Right.
And it does a good job of doing just that. I mean, it's a portrait of poverty, and in that world, it's hard to find any light. It's pretty dark.
You get it right up from the beginning when Pablo kills the one guy who has a job. He's working on a roof. It's like he's working, and he gets killed.
Right, and he's the one that's taking care of his drunk dad.
Again, Buñuel's kind of communism, his politics are apparent in this, and that's why you would never see a film like this out of the U.S. Anywhere near that time.
No.
To suggest that it's the system, it's not like here it'd be like, well, those kids need to get a job and get tougher, and it's all about the individual, where he sees it as obviously a whole different way.
But in these last two comments, I mean, it's almost like it is so bleak that you don't even know where to start. Where would you start if you were trying to fix this? And that's another kind of bleak picture, and you can see why contemporary bourgeois audiences in Mexico hated this, because you're saying it's such a dark picture of us, and Buñuel is saying
they're the pedophile.
Where else? Any other? Way back over there. Yeah.
Back to the window scene.
Yeah.
Do you happen to know if they recorded dialogue?
No. I doubt it, because
Nah,
what
that's
if
so.
his-
What would you want to hear? It's
Yeah.
so. It's like a silent movie, you know. And it's
Yeah.
so intentionally through a window.
Yeah, so one of the things I talk about in the book is one of his stylistic tropes was what I call the unheard conversation, where he would show characters behind a window, and they would be talking, but you couldn't hear what they were saying. And it would be frustrating initially, but then you realize you kind of understand what was going on, and you didn't need the words. And then it's kind of this clever trick that he does, because you realize how much do I really need to know? I can see what's happening. And so, you know, I think that was one of his stylistic points. And it's a complete scene in one take, okay? And that's how you can edit it fast. You just put that scene next to the next scene, next to the next scene. And it's, in a way, it's even more heartbreaking that you don't hear any of the words, because you figure it out.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, I think that must have come from his observations. You know, he spent those months. You know, all we have is our observations of the world around us, and you know, you make your conclusions. You know, you can't help it. Your brain's processing it. So, you see something like that, and that. So much of this is always back on us as the audience. It's like we have to reach our own conclusions. A lot of our questions and everything we're talking about is like, it's how you see the world, how you see humanity, how you see. It's big questions, you know, but it's kind of on all of us. You know, that's what makes it kind of such a invigorating film. And I think it always will be, because it's always really asking, like, well, who are we as humans? Are we, you know...
Yeah, and he turns it back on us. I mean, when Pedro throws the egg in the lens, and breaks the invisible fourth wall.
Well, I'm sure that's a window in front,
yeah, I'm
too.
sure,
Very
yeah,
clear,
it's Gabriel
yeah.
Figueroa, so
But
it's a plate of glass.
What a great moment.
No, it's just like, oh,
yeah,
you know we're here, you know. There's another moment like that.
Yeah, that's an amazing moment.
It is. There's another moment like that.
How many takes did they do, you think?
Gosh, one.
Just nailed it, the egg, somewhere near the lens.
Yeah, you get one egg.
Yeah.
It was a one egg shot. There's another moment like that if you're a Spanish speaker with the legless man that they attack. He's got a sign on his little cart. Those of you who are Spanish speakers, do you remember what it said?
Me mirabas.
Me mirabas. How would you translate that?
You were looking at me.
Yeah. I translate it as, are you looking at me? And it's basically saying, how are you looking at me? Why are you looking at me? Are you trying to pity me? I don't want your pity. Look at me like a human being. Or don't look at me at all. All of that is just in that sign. So if you're a Spanish speaker and you see that, once again, it's back on you. You're looking at me, what are you going to do about me? And I don't want your pity. I want your understanding, and I want to be treated like a human being. All of that just with that sign. So he's, once again, breaking that fourth wall and kind of involving us in that world. We can't just pull away and say, some problem. It's our problem. And if you're a Spanish speaker who got that, you might be a Spanish speaker in Mexico who got that. And then, so it's the system, and aren't you part of the system? You know, and aren't we all part of the system in a way? So, what else?
In the shadows in the far back.
Yeah, we can. Oh yeah, way in the background. Yeah, hi.
I was just thinking, about these kids being expected to work and thinking, like, how old were those kids?
Yeah.
And then I remember the scene of the baby, when the baby had a marble in its mouth.
Yeah, yeah.
And the
Swallowing a
mom takes
marble.
the marble out of the mouth and throws it
Yeah.
out the door. And I thought, you just threw like a toy. And so I was just thinking about, what child, she did that, and then I think she gave the baby a toy.
Mm-hmm.
Was it a donkey? Was it like a beautiful little donkey toy?
A horse, maybe? Yeah, I don't remember.
Yeah, I was just, I was wondering if that was maybe tied to, it's like an instrument of work. And then I was just trying to think of what other toys and playthings and ways that the kids got pleasure in the movie. I thought that the scene with the little dressed up dogs
Yeah,
was really great.
It was the dancing dogs.
The
Yeah.
dancing dogs, which was, a way that someone was making their living. There are just so few toys in that movie.
Mm.
So few, like the kids just, it's just all work. Just
Or made up toys, whatever, yeah.
Yeah, from the very beginning, the boys are playing that little bullfighting game.
Yeah.
Just like, that's a good example of just, you're kind of on your own. You're just going to have to make your own fun. Yeah, the strings. Yeah, they really they have nothing.
That was such a sad game, the strings.
Yeah.
Yeah, this time, you were talking about every time you see it, you see something else, or you remember something else. The one that got to me really this time was when the mother and Pedro have that argument, and he almost hits her.
Yeah.
And the baby is on the bed crying. Really crying, okay? And I'm going, wow, it's heartbreaking. Just tore me up. Golly.
Good performance by that baby.
Yeah. Great baby performance. That's baby Wrangler.
A couple more questions and we'll wrap it up. It is.
Yes.
Oh, sorry. Oh, yeah.
What, me?
I think so.
Go for it.
So as I was watching it, completely novice at this, but I see very animalistic, and with the aristocratic or more rich people, they want to think that they're more intellectual and that their society has become more intellectual. But this is constantly like Haibo was picking on like the disease, he was picking on the weaker, he was picking on small, and when you look at Pedro in comparison to his friends and everything, he's also like the runt around them, constantly being picked on and like abandoned out of even his mother, like, what are you doing here? Why haven't you gone already? Why haven't you gone away? How do you see this from like a more carnal, animalistic side?
Well, is he the runt in his family? He's the oldest, right? I mean, he's got these little siblings that she's paying attention to, and he's kind of.
But they're part of a whole other
But in the gang,
she's lost him to the streets, but he's just being initiated where he is the runt. He is the new kid who's kind of.
Yeah. Well, it is. Yeah, it's a tough
going
world.
through almost like a ritual. He'll have to serve his time to be a part of that gang, being the youngest and dealing. So just probably his only option.
And you see it with Ojitos too. He's the new guy, and so he has to kind of work his way in, and he's the outsider, and all of them. They have a lot of fun with him, and Small Eyes, and all of that.
But they're right in there. Speaking of animals, I mean, Pablo's living in a barn. He's living in.
Yeah.
And everyone has chickens.
And he's orphaned. His father has left him.
They're all orphans.
Yeah. Wow.
Where are the dads?
Yeah. No kidding. A lot of hands.
Pedro's dad has died.
Yeah.
5 years ago or something. Okay, right behind. Oh. He is.
I'm curious to hear more about. You mentioned Freud a couple times. And one of my favorite parts is when the principal kind of played the role of the psychiatrist and wanted to talk about why he was hitting the chicken, and he actually, was it because you wanted to kill us?
Right.
And
Very.
we talked so much about the role of the system, but here they're kind of switching it to focus on the human psyche. So I'm curious I don't know, you mentioned Freud and whether there's any other elements of psychotherapy or.
Again, I think it was the air they were breathing, at that time.
Yeah. Gosh. I'm not going to comment on Freud.
It was very, but it was that you see it in so much of that era.
But what I would say is, if you see, after seeing this, and you see the last part of the 400 Blows, I mean, a lot of similarities. I mean, the boy goes to correctional home, problematic relation with the mother. The mother comes to visit.
Already kind of.
Yeah, the mother comes to visit, and he's, he doesn't.
She's moved on to.
Yeah.
She has a
very
boyfriend.
Similar. Yeah.
About Freud, and Habo was with the mom, who it'd be great to have a mother.
Yeah. Gosh.
And then he's seducing.
He's seducing the mom.
Freud. So a couple more.
We didn't take anybody over here.
Sorry.
Just about Ojitos, how he was dressed differently than the other children. He was more like indigenous, kind of, like he came from outside of the city.
Yeah,
it's called country.
They call
him a peasant.
Country village or something.
He refers to him, you're a peasant.
Yeah, very naive to everything that was going around and
Mhm.
happening, and I guess the sister, the older sister there, I don't know, there's just not much history on it, and I want to believe that the loyalty that he had towards his father and always keeping his father in mind just made me think that maybe he wasn't forgotten. And I don't know, I guess the just not knowing whether he was actually dropped off and left there, like the blind man said, or, you know, did something really happen? There's no cell phones to find each other. You are in a market,
But
I don't know, kids are kids.
The blind man also says he sees this a lot.
That's
He's
right.
not coming back. You know, like by day 2, he's like,
Yeah, but he's jaded by the city, so I don't know, I want to believe that maybe because of the loyalty that, you know, Ojitos has for his father, like, no, he's going to come back, he's going to come back. That
well,
maybe-
it seems a one-sided you know, thing at this point.
Yeah.
So it'd be nice. I hope so. But,
Yeah. Well, we want to believe that the father will come back.
yeah, again, an absent father.
I'm trying to find the good.
We're trying to find something to believe in.
But he refocused it on the blind.
Yeah.
It helped him. You know, I mean, he has a roof over his head and kind of a job, I guess.
But
although he thinks about whacking him over the head.
But he also picks up the stone
Yeah,
at one point.
Tempting.
Yeah.
Not a great guy, that the blind guy.
The blind, yeah.
So you had a question?
I just wanted to comment back. We talked a lot about the principal, and because he's kind of this unusual figure in the film, and this maybe says more about me than about the filmmakers. Maybe I'm being too cynical, but to me, I was watching it, and I almost felt like he was like a parody, because he's kind of talking in this very high-minded way.
Yeah.
Like, you know, he had that line, you know, we mentioned, you know, the line like, you know, we block the poverty is dead children, you know, that's a great line, you know, and it's valid, but it's also like, you know, a bumper sticker, you know, like, and I'm thinking about, you know, I don't know much about, you know, what his politics were. I mean, you know, obviously said he was a communist, and I'm sure he had, you know, broad
I think at that time,
sympathies.
Sure.
You know, probably wasn't a good party man, but, you know, when I think of, you know, like sort of the radical critique of, you know, like charity, like, oh, well, you know, you can help some people, but it's not fixing the problem. And I don't want to run down charity, especially tonight when part of my ticket is presumably going to a big charity. But, you know, I kind of get this feeling that, you know, again, we talked about, you know, the system a lot tonight. And he kind of felt like he was using that character, the principal, is kind of this, like, he's the good side of the system, you know, but it's not, he's still, you know, he can't fix it. And I don't, and, you know, again, I don't think the movie's proposing,
Well,
the movie's not proposing a solution.
yeah, clearly it shows him not fixing it. I mean, in this situation we see, it's not ending well. But I don't know. I think
I mean, I guess
he's
I mean,
clearly
it's not a question, but I guess my question would be, you know, am I just being too cynical?
maybe a little bit. I think he's a. I think he's clearly educated. He's clearly he wears a tie.
He's trying to.
But I think
do
he
the
has
right
a
thing.
heart. You know, I think.
His assistant, though, like, there's something.
Yeah, the assistant's a little.
It seems like the assistant has that weird smile that suddenly appears.
Yeah, I think he's more hardened than the. Well, there's a reason he's the boss. You know, but.
I mean, to me, there's something
I
like
know.
this sort of. It wasn't like ha ha funny, but.
No, yeah, I know what you're saying. Okay, let's take a vote. The principal, good guy or guy? Okay.
Good guy.
Good guy, heart in the right place. Okay.
Okay.
Like, I don't know about that guy. How many?
But that's
Yeah,
that's
okay.
what I mean by like the
Yeah.
radical critique, where it's like, you know, he could be a good guy, but at the same time he could be, you know.
He was
Not-
touching him a lot. He looked a lot like the guy who.
It's actually the same actor, just a different.
He shaved.
Yeah, that was the again
He
a
took his hat
subversive
off.
little touch by Buñuel. But I mean certainly no. Yeah, it is bumper sticker kind of to say something like that.
Well,
Wish I could.
it doesn't sound like anyone else in the film.
No, and
No,
I
well,
think
he's not like anyone else in the film.
No one else has,
Yeah.
you know, is in the position where they can
But-
walk
but-
about.
and
But I
I
love
think-
that he's the only one who actually diagnoses him and says he just needs some trust and affection. And he just met the kid, basically.
Yeah.
Even after he beat, a chicken to death. He kind of senses something. So I don't know. I think he's one of the good guys, I have to think.
All the little kids working in the fields, though, you know.
Yeah.
You're getting fed. You're getting an education.
His goal is to teach them to read. I think that whatever that system is, and who knows where the funding's coming from. I don't know if it's private or government or whatever. But you know, what are you going to do? You know.
And I think it's a problem with a film that is so bleak, and you have this one character who isn't, and you almost don't know what to do with that character. It's like, whoa, this guy is too good. What's going on with him? You know, so
it's heartbreaking to see our guy become the problem guy within the reform school. Like, he didn't do anything to even belong there, and now he's the one starting fights. He's almost taken on, you know, Havel's worst characteristics.
Killing chickens. Yeah.
Yeah.
The kids in the school, like, they didn't have a whole system of don't rat. They went straight to the principal, and they were all like on board with, no, we're not gonna rebel. So there's obviously some kind of culture there that's very different from what's happening outside of the school.
Yeah. She's saying there's a culture within the school of, you know, they have a certain kind of code that of behavior, right? And they're the ones that say, no, you can't do that. This isn't how we do it here.
Yeah, just
So.
eating an egg, which is, you know, that's,
Yeah.
we have to sell those. Like, okay.
Yeah,
no,
they went and
they
told
ratted
the
him out
principal.
immediately.
Yeah.
Hey, man. It is kind of a prison.
Yes.
Okay, last
time to wrap
question.
it up.
Anybody have one that just, you know, you got something to say about Buñuel that none of us can, our lives can't proceed without? No pressure.
Three hands go up.
Yeah. Yeah, the hands are going down. Okay. Well, you were recommended too by the fellow sitting a couple seats down. So.
So throughout the film, there's like a huge theme of like parents, like the fathers being missing. And that's just like throughout the film. And you said earlier that like the parents that were there, they all like were awful, they all suck. So like, and
Adults,
you guys been referencing that like the film was more about like the system and how it was that was the main problem. But like throughout the film, it's mentioned like so many times that the lack of fathers and the ones that are there are just like not are the main problem. So do you guys think that the system is the cause for what's happening, or do you think that it's like the fathers, like all of them missing, is the main problem for like these kids' just like behavior?
Again, it's kind of your politics. You know, if you're a, you know, it's the breakdown of the family, and that's the reason for all our problems. Or it's the system. You know, it's that system is maybe crushing out, you know, the fathers. They're having to either go far away to work or breaking up families. The evils of a capitalist system tear apart the families versus the family is this, you know, so it's really just how
poverty.
Poverty.
Poverty is the problem.
Clearly poverty is, but again, that's, you know, that's kind of the way you judge poverty is political. So, you know, just a bunch of losers, lazy people who don't want to work, or are they, you know, a system beyond their, you know, so it's so personal, you know, how you see it. Where do you come down? Is it the dads or the?
Well, I mean, like the film was like they mentioned the fathers a lot, so I assume that like Burrell was like was specifically blaming just the lack of fathers, unless like.
I don't know if they're anything like the moms. Maybe it's good they're not around. I think there'd be like, you know, they're probably worse macho versions. I picture a lot of beatings for some reason. I don't know.
So it's good they're absent. Yeah.
I don't really mean that, but yeah, poverty it crushes the whole family. No one comes out very very well. So anyway, on that note.
Yeah, on that happy note.
Can you say a word about next week's film?
Yes, a week from tonight, we're showing.
Or
Thursday.
Thursday.
A week from Thursday, right?
Wait.
Next Thursday.
Next Thursday. A week from Thursday.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
this is
Tuesday.
Yes, a week from Thanksgiving. A week from this coming Thursday. Yeah, the 30th anniversary screenings continue with a German film, Ulrich Oettinger's Ticket of No Return, also known as Portrait of a Woman Drinker. This one's a kind of a wild card. Haven't seen it in a long time. Remember really loving it a long time ago. Kind of a beautifully bizarre movie. Talk about surreal. You know, I think it has some Buñuel in it for sure. And took it even farther. So it's very, you know, funny and weird. I don't know much about, you know, films, I just remember images, very striking images and some general things about it. But it's one of those like, let's see that again. We found, Lars found a 35 print. I'm like, you gotta be kidding. I thought that film had disappeared completely. So we're just lucky to have a print of it. And I really want to encourage all of you to come out next Thursday.
Did you see it in Houston also?
No, that one, we showed it in '88. Yeah, part of a avant-garde feature series we were calling The Front Line back then. And I had seen it once before in the '80s, but then showed it ourselves. And then poof, you know, I haven't heard of it or seen it around much since. So that's one of those films we want to try to revive and kind of see how it, you know, we do that every now and then. You know, we kind of rediscover a film and go, wait, why is that one not in the canon? You know, why isn't, you know, so we're giving that one a big forum for us all to check it out and see what we think. So come join us. It's going to be fun. You saw a little trailer of it before. Color and very, very visual. She's very an artist at work, for sure.
For sure. So a week from Thanksgiving.
Yeah.
And the 30th anniversary
Continues.
celebration continues. And
Absolutely.
in the meantime, happy Thanksgiving.
So yeah, have a good one. So thanks, guys.